Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast by Closers.io where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Samuel Konzum, and in each episode, we'll uncover the stories behind successful startups, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future expansion. Today, we're excited to have Matt Haller, the principal and co-founder of Rev Eng Consulting, and he will be sharing more about his founding story, as well as giving us a glimpse into his plans for future growth. So let's jump right in. Matt, welcome to Founders Future.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Excellent. So take us back to the beginning here. What specific problem inspired you to start the business?
We started Rev Eng based on a premise that consulting is always something that is going to be needed, but it's lost its footing and its place in modern business. I think we all know the phrase of I can hire a consultant who's going to take my watch and tell me what time it is. And I think what that practically boiled down to in my experience was I always found working with consultants that either I had a strategy person who was really good at strategy, but had no idea how to talk about data systems and tools, or I found really good data systems and tools people who weren't given the context of the strategy people, and then made it really hard for those folks to actually deliver on the promise of the project that they were setting out to do in the first place. So we set out to change that by being a more execution oriented consulting firm. We believe that our teams need to be data savvy enough to be able to talk to you about what your strategy is in the boardroom and be able to have that same conversation with your developers in their own language, bringing those technical requirements to life. And that's really been the promise that we set out to complete. It's why we named the company Rev Eng, that it's at the end of the day, this is about establishing your revenue engine. And I know that once you get that motor humming, that's when the things can be really fun, but it's really challenging to keep an engine going. So we aim to be that kind of pit crew for our clients.
What was some of your background prior to starting the business, and how have those experiences really influenced the way that we handle things now?
Yeah, great question. I started my career in consulting. So I worked at a couple of different consulting firms and I've tried my like small boutique firms that focus just on strategy. I've worked at the large big four system integrators and I've also worked in startups. So I've also been the head of partnerships for a startup. And I think the through line across all of these experiences is I've always been interested in data and I've always been interested in helping people solve the problems that they feel like are intractable. And oftentimes it's the data problems, right? It's the system problems that people are like, we can't do this because it's always been like this. We need to live within these constructs. I worked through consulting. I worked through building my own company, my own product. And along the way, I think I first picked up the kind of business management skills, right? You look at here's in a consulting firm, you look at a project and you say, how do I collect data from the client? How do I question what that data is going to look like? How do I synthesize and create insights and present them back so that a client can make a plan, right? There's a big strategy component to that. But then as I developed in my career, I got more tactical and I spent more time actually in like systems, data, and tools. I've built a couple of different commission systems over the years for sales teams, for example. And in those experiences, I learned to be more technical, right? So now in this role, I'm really fusing the two together by being able to work with my clients on a lot of their strategy issues, but then also using a lot of my technical skills, both to help our clients achieve their goals and actually achieve them in a way that's going to be sustainable and drive the ultimate business objectives that they're looking for. But it's also helping me build a more sustainable, more efficient consulting operation because we want to be, just like if we're going to task our clients to be part of a modern revenue growth organization, we should be taking our own medicine and trying to be as scalable as we can as well.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that there's more to this than just the go-to-market strategy. This is really bridging the gap between the strategy side, the technology side, and the data. What do you notice is one misconception that clients often have when it comes to those two components of business?
Oh, my favorite thing is we'll sit in a meeting in like a boardroom, and maybe it's the end of 3 months of design. We work through all of these different workshops. Everybody's grappling with these different ideas. We make a bunch of decisions. And at the end of those 3 months, we're aligned, right? The whole executive team is like ready to go. And they think that's it. We've made the decision. We can go and get started and let's just start communicating to people. But in reality, change and bringing strategies to life involve both human capital change management, like working with people on what behaviors are required of them and making sure they really understand here's what is going to be different about what your role looks like in the future. It's also about digital change because the telling people what behaviors I want out of them is only going to take me so far, right? What I'm also looking for is a digital platform that reinforces those behaviors so that people don't fall back into the same comfortable routine that they've always fell into. And that's something that for every single sales leader that I've ever worked with feels like it's one of those intractable problems that we spend so much time planning, but we never can seem to get our sales systems quite into a place where we want them to be to run, and this is key, the most efficient sales organization possible. Right? It's not going to be perfect, but it feels the only things that we can accomplish are changing account ownership in Salesforce or maybe updating a commission system when I'm like, there's so much more that goes into being a seller that if we can think two steps down the road about here's what their lives are going to look like, then we can actually focus on building digital experiences that make their jobs easier. And when their jobs are easier, that means they have more time for things like prospecting, negotiating, spending time with clients, and ultimately closing more business.
And we spoke offline a bit about this as well, but it sounds like a lot of your time is dedicated towards sales compensation, towards sales incentives. What does an engagement like that look like between, let's say, a client coming to work with you and then Rev Eng itself?
Yeah, so a lot of clients will come to me and start from a place of, hey, we want to start plan design. We remember last year we did it and it was a nightmare. I still can feel the PTSD from running all of the Excel models trying to forecast what the commission costs might be. So I know that I want someone else to do this for me this year. And so they'll come to us and just say, help us. And in those cases, it's usually somewhere in the ballpark of 6 to 10 weeks of work. And what that looks like is we start by partnering with our clients. We collect some of their past historical compensation data. We'll also interview some of their sales team members, their leadership members to understand their strategy and how that strategy is being executed on the ground. And then we bring those two insights together into an assessment, and we use some of our best practices from over 50 years in sales compensation to deliver a roadmap of recommendations for a client on how we can bridge the gap between what they say their strategy is and how that sales comp program is coming to life. And from there,
And
go ahead, sorry.
no, absolutely. I'd love to hear you continue.
From there, we just jump into design cycles. So once we get through the assessment, what's nice is that we have a couple of areas that we can drill into, and then we work with our clients to create targeted workshops, and we facilitate decision making on those opportunity areas by saying, here's based on our experience and what we know about your business, here's a couple of different options on the way that we could approach this issue. Here's the implications of each one of these decisions, and try to make it so that we make the decision making process for sales compensation as easy and as modular as possible.
I'm curious as well, how do our clients actually find you at this point in time? What channels or what methods have we noticed to be most effective when it comes to client acquisition?
So the best one for us has been LinkedIn. We are really active. All of us at the leadership level are posting pretty consistently on LinkedIn. We also have our channel at Rev Eng Consulting. We are also starting out and exploring a new kind of marketing strategy on YouTube and Instagram as well, where we'll be posting what we're calling our Revving Up video content series. I think it's starting in a week or two, where we want to be interviewing a lot of the leaders that we are interacting with, our clients, and asking them about real tactical challenges that they're facing, and using that as a medium to share some of the success stories of what we've been able to accomplish as a business. So using LinkedIn has been our first primary channel, but then using other additional ones that are considered more B2C to try to see that if we take a more human approach to B2B marketing, can we try to drum something up that's interesting on those different channels?
And I'm curious as well, what would you identify as the current bottleneck in the business? Is it related to that lead generation, the sales process, capacity, fulfillment, or is it something else entirely?
So I think in a consulting firm, the biggest challenge is always going to be time because we have to deliver projects. We also have to work on internal chores, activities, whatever to keep the business running. And then we also have to prospect and generate new clients. That is something that is definitely been a challenge, will continue to be a challenge for us. And so trying to invest in internal tooling for us to make our time as efficient as possible has been really key so we can focus on our own prospecting activities. The other one, and this is big for us, is investing in relationships with partners because we believe that having strong relationships with complementary firms and companies just makes us better. And takes a lot of pressure off of the need to do that individual one-to-one prospecting motion.
Absolutely. And how is the team structured today, specifically when it comes to sales and marketing functions?
So just like your traditional consulting firms, you've got a set of leaders, partners, principals at the top that are responsible for the sales and marketing function of the business, and everybody has a set of responsibilities. So one of our partners is going to be more responsible for LinkedIn content, another one's going to be more responsible for YouTube and Instagram, another one's going to be more responsible for the website. And so what's nice is that we're divvying up some of those different responsibilities across different people, which makes it a little bit easier, takes the pressure off of any one person to have to be constantly on for content creation. And then you eat what you kill. So whatever comes up, whatever leads come in, sometimes we'll work together on bigger opportunities, but otherwise we find those leads, work through them, and then we have a team of folks that we'll work with to actually deliver the work once it's closed.
And as we look to the future throughout the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months, what would you identify as our current top priorities for growth?
Number one is to get to that ever elusive. We want to make that our first $1 million. We're well on our way. I'm very excited about that. But we want to hit our first million as our new fully branded Rev Eng consulting firm. And we are confident with the team and the partners and the relationships we have in place that we can get there.
Absolutely. And for a situation like this, assuming we didn't have any resource capacity issues or time or financial challenges with that, what would be the change? Let's say if we removed all constraints, what would we implement into the business today?
Probably a couple things. I'd probably invest more in some advertising just because do I think that advertising is the be all end all for everything that you can do in business? No. And I think you can build a really strong business without investing in digital advertising. But it helps juice things. So I think that that's a great area. If I had an unlimited budget, I'd throw some money in advertising. I'd also double down on a roadshow schedule and select some of the biggest conferences that for people that we would be working with. So revenue operations professionals, VPs of sales, and spend a lot of time either presenting at or sponsoring those because I do think that conferences are coming back, live events are coming back. People want to be in person again. And I see that being another avenue to create that trust and credibility with future clients.
For someone who might be asking the questions around how do I structure my compensation effectively for my sales individuals, what advice would you give to them as first step or first initial action as far as really addressing that concern?
So I think the biggest challenge that I see when it comes to designing comp plans is people struggle to just decide and prioritize what is important to the business. At the end of the day, it is very rare for a sales incentive program of any size to have more than 5 goals across the entire team, right? Usually I just want 3 goals on an individual plan, but then across the entire team, there's usually about 5 things that everybody can accomplish. If you can align as a leadership team on what those 5 things are, you would be amazed at how much easier it is to go through and design the incentive plans. I get called in half the time because people have negotiated the inclusion of all of these little incentive structures into their plans, trying to drive the right behavior or that person's pet project. That's where plans get complicated. That's where they get confusing. That's where reps stop looking at them and just say, I'm just going to sell and whatever I get paid. And that's when the incentive plan stops becoming a strategic driver of your business. So if you can focus on really narrowing down, this is what's important to us this year, everything flows from that really easily, like dramatically easily. You'd be amazed at actually how easy it is to design an incentive plan when everyone's on the same page about what's important. But if it was easy to agree on that, then I guess consulting wouldn't exist, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And it sounds like you're really branching into mission, vision, and values for a company as well, as far as where are we going and how are we going to get there and what are we going to treat ourselves or how are we going to treat each other on the path to get there.
Yeah, we actually just had that conversation this morning in our all hands meeting, and that culture and values is like one of the most important things any business can do because the way that we do something matters. I had somebody text me a few years ago that I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. And he said, Matt, I know we haven't spoken in a really long time, but when we were younger, you always made me feel like I was seen and heard and valued and people never forget the way that you make them feel, right? And so the way that we do our business matters, the way that we approach our clients matters. And one of the things that's been really important to us as a growing firm is recognizing that there's an egalitarian nature of consulting because we've all got to jump in and solve problems. One of my favorite things or my favorite values that we have is that we're all willing to jump in and nobody's too proud or too big or too senior to do something like build an Excel model. I want to make that as easy as possible, right? I want to build tools and I want to train people, and I don't want people spending a lot of their time doing that kind of work. But at the same time, if it's got to get done, it's got to get done, right? And if we want this business to be successful, and we do, then we all have to just take our medicine sometimes and focus on doing the right thing, even if it's not the fun thing at the time.
Absolutely. For you personally, what would you identify as the best piece of advice you've ever received when it comes to the world of entrepreneurship or the world of business?
I am going to shout out my father on this one, who's been giving me the same mantra since I've been like 6 years old. And he said there's only three things that matter. He called them the three H's, and that you're happy, healthy, and productive. And if you're following along, the joke is that there's only two H's. That's my father for you. But he really said that happy, healthy, and productive is the North Star, that you've got to be happy because if you're not happy, then what's the point? You've got to be healthy because you've got to take care of yourself for yourself and the people around you. And you need to have some level of productivity, right? Nobody's asking you to be Bill Gates. No one's asking you to be Mark Zuckerberg, but you've got to find some way to contribute to this world in some way, shape, or form. And if I can keep that as my North Star, I think I'd be doing okay.
Absolutely. And what other piece of advice would you give to either a younger version of yourself or a younger entrepreneur maybe branching out for the first time?
There are so many implicit lessons that you carry about the way things should be, the way that you should work. That you are 24, 25 years old, so you need to spend a couple more years in the corporate world before you earn the right to go off and branch off and do your own thing. I just think that's not true. And I think that the world is increasingly becoming a place where you can chart your own course. It's not going to be easy, but there's no reason to feel stuck in the world of I need to be doing this because it's where I'm supposed to be in my career, where I am at like the stage of my life. There's so many different people on this planet and there's so many different journeys that you can take. The only thing that you have to do is take that first step, not give up, and focus on continuing to be happy, healthy, and productive, and you will get there.
And the path will reveal itself every step of the way. Matt, this has
It
been an
tends
absolute
to.
pleasure. It tends to. If someone wants to learn more about you, about Rev Eng, or potentially work with you or partner with you, where should they go?
Always good to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's Matt Haller, Matthaller on LinkedIn, or check us out at revengconsulting.com.
Perfect. And to all of our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their sales through trained sales individuals and world-class marketing systems. Until then, keep climbing, and we'll see you in the next episode.